All right, thank you for joining the Minority Alliance Organization meeting today. Today we'll be discussing basically the unaccount unaccounted for voters who I feel should actually be recognized by the Democratic Party if they are to win this presidency, and also taking a deeper look into the power structure of the government and the future of the power structure of the government uh, following the 2020 election, and whichever direction we go in following that. Also, we were notified of, Ice Cube statements of working with Trump in certain issues, and we'll talk a little bit of that on the back end today. But I just wanted you to open up, Mark, a little bit before we started here, what we were talking on, the direction we were headed there, of the need for a different political party, yes, still, but the need for us to go out this year and make our votes count and make our voices heard.
Absolutely. So one of the first things that I would note as being the greatest issue of governance between what we need, at our own level and what we see going on television, what we see going on with, how these votes tend to go and where they take them. It really just comes down to both parties, both major parties doing two things. Number one, making sure that they're keeping any other parties out. And the other thing is being such a business oriented, corporate style, money driven machine that, a lot of what we ask for, a lot of what we need, and a lot of what we're trying to get, those messages get co opted into what motivates us and what moves us. What one of the biggest motivators, maybe the biggest motivator for any minority community is race. We see race get, kind of banted about in literally everything when some issues are more socioeconomic, when issues are more about power and more about, how to maintain that power and a system created to kind of keep a specific sect where they're at, and the training of it. We talk about police all the time, and for police, we'd be fooling ourselves to say that there isn't a racial element to it. But at the same time, and I mentioned this earlier, what is the greatest crime that you can commit, when speaking to a police officer? It's disobeying a police officer. It isn't just necessarily being black. It isn't necessarily, any of those other things, but it really, and you'll see this happen, in a lot of other instances as well. And we've seen this happen in other countries as well, where the power of they're trained to dominate, actually, and the word dominate gets used. And so there's this kind of sense and feeling of you're going to, you got to up the level. You have to up the level, up the level, up the level. And a lot of times that there's only one place that goes. That goes to a brutalization of people because you need to dominate the situation. It goes to the death of some people because you're dominating the situation, and you believe that because you exist, you are therefore right. There's a training that goes into that, and a belief system that's kind of buoyed by those political parties that will go ahead and co-opt whatever message they need to co-opt to motivate people to get enough votes to continue to move that boulder for them, get into power, and do what it is that they're trying to do. Again, I make no mistake, when we have this particular election and what we're looking at, and obviously we'll get into this a little bit later, we can make our own determinations based on what we're seeing and what's going on. But make no mistake, the using of a minority as pawns is definitely happening on both sides. We're stupid not to understand that motivating anger, motivating need, motivating want, motivating desire, motivating what we know we're missing has been, a key thing for trying to get, our vote and trying to get our thing, and then we'll see what happens when someone makes promises or someone says something and then they don't live up to it. There's a disenfranchisement that goes on about that. And then the other party always swoops in and magically says, well, one of the big problems that that you guys are having. This is something that will, come on over to this side, come on over to this side. And, we end up seeing that over and over and over again with things. I mean, now one of the big things now is, you see people trying to sell the fact that they're willing to quote unquote work with the Black community. Oh, we'll talk about these plans, but there are no details in these plans. There are no, real things behind it. You hear people, oh, we want to do criminal justice reform. Well, where? The who, the why, the what, the when, the how. Those things don't come. And then when they don't come, one thing that we can bet on is that there will be the other political party as we get ready for the next midterm, who will be like, hey, those guys didn't do anything for you, over here. What we're going to do is this. And in the meantime, none of these things are being addressed. None of these things are actually addressing the systemic issues that we're seeing in our neighborhoods, whether it be education, business, criminal justice, healthcare, the sustainability of being able to get a foothold and actually rise up as a community and be able to actually take care of itself more than what it had ever been able to do in its country's history. Of course, there are more Black millionaires right now than there's ever existed. Does the Black community have more authority and more say-so over its own prosperity now than ever before? Absolutely not. That part's never changed. The flashpoint tensions over race has been sensationalized by the media and by the way that it's spoken of and by the way it's talked about. The real issue is that nothing really ever changed. The sensationalization of it changed, so it feels worse today than it's ever felt before. To a lot of people who have living memory, but it's not worse. It's constant, and there's so much going on to try and keep it that way. So the need for other parties, the need for other kind of established political orders that will actually address some of the issues that we're looking to address, the need for that has never been greater because, the times are moving faster. There are the ability to reach more people now and be able to get a legitimate message out has never been stronger than it is today. Even though the ability to misinform has been is now just as powerful. But, we can, more people can be reached. And, so now more than ever, the need for a legitimate, kind of party for the people and, in our case, party for minorities is, now greater than ever and probably more achievable than ever.
And, in that statement, I was telling you a little bit about before we started with the whole, I saw a video from P. Diddy a while back speaking on how he thought, we needed to address things during the election this year, and his movement to actually start building a I believe is a Black party of sorts. And I definitely agree with the need for a third party, but I definitely don't agree with the need to. We don't need to make a third party that is so race geared, because then we end up losing every election we get in, because you still have to appeal to the American people and not just one group per se. So I believe we can't attack the situation that way. That's not the correct way to attack the situation if we are to gain different positions within the government and things of that nature. Uh, my ideology personally, I feel like, especially with starting, the organization, even in the wording, why we worded it as the Minority Alliance organization is specifically so that everyone could be included. Uh, even people who are not minorities, if you feel like you understand uh, the systemic inequality that we face and the things that we're trying to achieve, we still have people within the organization that, are not necessarily minorities, but they support our movement and the things that we're trying to get done. So I believe as an African American man, we cannot focus so much on the specific, when it comes to as far as a party. As far as some policies, yes, we need to focus on policies geared towards Black individuals specifically. I do agree on that nature. But as far as coming up with a political party, you have to make something that everybody feels comfortable, being a part of and things of that nature. Even when you were speaking on the police brutality a little bit earlier and things of that nature, I just wanted to note, I told you a little bit about it earlier, the situation in Nigeria and things of that sort. And, if police brutality is a race issue, why are they experiencing it in Nigeria where it shouldn't be a race issue or things of that nature? I think that, as you said a little bit earlier, governmental law enforcement, anything of that nature is becomes a power uh, situation and a power struggle. And even with this election, that's the biggest thing that we're heading into. And that's the main thing that I want to attack today is we're as minorities, I think, especially, I can speak specifically as African American men, we need to do our research and see which way we're voting and what we're voting for. In the election this year, uh, I heard Obama a little bit earlier. I've heard other people on social media and things of that nature say, vote blue, just vote blue. Uh, as a minority, just voting blue is not going to solve your problem. I can say that specifically. It's not going to solve your problem. Voting blue, I think, but as a personal opinion, and anybody could disagree with me or anything of the sorts, but I think me voting blue all the way down my ballot is me giving power to one uh, organization, one group. That's me saying, here, whatever you come up with, I am willing to take. If we vote blue, I mean, this is just me, speaking my personal opinion. If our whole government is ran by Democrats, even you as a minority person, if a bill comes across that you don't agree with the fine print, you don't have no say so. You don't have nobody blocking it. You don't have no, how do they say on your computer? You don't have any firewall uh, to protect you from anything if we vote all the way blue. What that means as minorities, we're giving up our firewall. So I just want people to be, specifically know what you're voting for and specifically know the direction you're heading in. And me as a person, I do not up, down, or in between, good, bad, or ugly. I don't believe in ever giving power to one specific party. I just don't. And I say that because the American government was built on a checks and balance system. And what is the use of a checks and balance system if there's nobody to check? There is no balance.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
my biggest push, as I don't know if you saw a post that I put up earlier, I know it's a little late, but I mean, research comes in and news comes in as it comes in. I see things, you know, as they happen. I mean, with what are we now? 12 days away?
Uh, 13. Yeah,
13? with,
13. Yeah.
with that many days ago, I hate to say this, but I mean, I put a post up earlier and said, we got to vote purple. And I say that in the sense of do your research more so than anything. Because it's different from state to state when it comes to my instance of voting purple. Uh, if you vote for Biden and you support Biden and Kamala Harris, we have to make sure that they are even still accounted for and that they are checked on their way. Because, I mean, I wouldn't, as I said earlier, I wouldn't give specific power to one individual or one group or anything of that nature. I just personally wouldn't do it. We've given as much power as we've given the law enforcement, and we see how that turned out for us. So, uh, in the sense of local elections, I've been notified over the past week or so, and that's why I said, I didn't know of these things until it actually came out. But in the past week, I've seen certain Republican candidates who would, the things that they were trying to get done. Now, they may not specifically word it, a way that as minorities, we've been taught that the Republican Party is against us. So the way things are worded, we don't always, we have a prejudged notion whenever you see Republican come across the screen, no matter what it is, as a minority, you automatically build a prejudged notion that this is norm. Most minorities build a most that are not independent thinkers come up with the notion that the Republican Party is just a party that's against us. And no, there are Republicans at local levels uh, all across the United States who are running, who have our vested interests in mind. That's being said, there are Democrats that have our vested interests in mind. Uh, but as I said, starting this, the biggest thing and my biggest issue is making sure to continue uh, our government the way it's supposed to be ran, and not uh, going so far in one direction that it will take us. If we think if we elect Trump, it's going to take us 10 years to reverse that. If we go elect all Democrats, it's going to take us 20 years to fix that.
Yeah, I think for everyone, we're in a situation now where, again, and I know I've said this in previous calls, the luxury of being an uneducated voter is a luxury that as minorities we can no longer afford. We have to do our research. We got to pay attention. We got to listen, and we have to take a look at who it is that we're voting for. No, it's not feasible to just go, okay, well, blue no matter who, all the way down the line. You have to look. Now, I will say, speaking for myself, because I've already voted, the overwhelming majority of what I voted for in this particular election was Democrat. However, it wasn't just because it was Democrat, it wasn't just because it was Republican, it was because of who they were, what they were talking about, what their particular platforms were, what they're saying, and when they said it. Because that's also particularly important as we move through this election cycle. When you see someone that actually even comes across with a policy that doesn't even sound half bad, and it's coming from somebody you didn't think of or somebody you weren't initially voting for. Well, when did they actually come out with that platform? Did they come out with that platform after they started seeing, some of these poll numbers, over this past summer? Did they come out with this? Have they been running this program, and have they been talking about this, since they announced that they were running, or, if they're a 3-term, congressman or senator, have they been talking about this for, the last 12 years? Or is this something that came up halfway through this year when they saw that, some of the, some certain parties' poll numbers were starting to dip? Because we have to remember, when we're dealing with politicians, we're dealing with people who are trained to say things that people want to hear. And we're also dealing with a media that is also trained to have a certain amount of partisan neutrality. And what I mean by partisan neutrality is that
Can
depending
I
on what
ask you
channel.
this? Can I ask you
Yes,
this,
sir.
Matt?
Yeah.
If and this is another one of my biggest issues going on currently. I forgot to mention it, but
Mm-hmm.
if media uh, is telling us vote Democrat, vote Democrat, vote Democrat,
Mm-hmm. Depending on
how
what channel you watch.
how majority of them, and majority of them are pro-Democrat, and that's something that does unease me, because the media has never, and like I said, I've only been around, I haven't been around as long as most, but for the time period that I've been around, the media has never had the minority interests, it seems, in mind.
Well, I can tell you this, and I was going to get to this a little bit later. The media is just like any other business, right? The media is not a self-funded organization. They are paid for by sponsors. They have, advertising, they have marketing, and those things are coming from corporations. These people, they have owners and ownership groups who, have, mega millions, if not billions, that are on the line when it comes to these things. Their access to, certain political parties is on the line every time they quote unquote hold somebody accountable. So when it comes to like the major networks of news, there are certain ones, obviously, when we talk about, whether it be CNN, Fox, NBC, whatever, and they will have, a specific lean to them. You have some of the other ones that are a little bit more fringe. Some of some of the Sinclair groups, the OANs, the Hill and people like that who lean even heavier because they're trying to get, they're trying to earn some of the political favor and capital that some of the big boys have already gotten. So that being said, I mean, you're going to have, this kind of leaning hard pendulum, depending, again, like I said, on what it is you're seeing. And right now they go with the popular opinion on what they'll lick their finger, put their finger in the wind as well, and see which way the wind is blowing. And that'll also kind of help dictate that partisan neutrality. There was such a sense of kind of like, oh, well, we can't really go too hard one way or the other by, CNN, for example, in 2016, whereas in 2020, there's a completely different sense of, okay, this is where this is blowing. So I feel a little more free now to openly criticize and things like that, which is why when you research and do your, try to get yourself educated on candidates, on what's going on, you have to look at the actual results. You got to look at the voting records. You got to look at, what they've done and what they got going on. You got to hear from their own mouth what they're doing. Because basically news as it has basically broken down into like shows that you see on sports channels where, you got two people who are sitting there and they just debate all day long based on their own specific ideology. That isn't news. That's opinion and narrative shaping. And they've been in that business for a while now. And that shaping of narrative is meant to kind of push people into this pen one way or the other. So if you're truly going to be an educated voter, you can't be a part of the debate show. You have to actually be fully educated. You have to actually know, like, okay, if you have a senator coming up in your state, what are they doing? This is an incumbent, right? He's been in office, and for a lot of the Senate seats, we're talking about 6 years. So, you've been in the Senate for 6 years. What have you done? What have you voted on? What are you going on? How does that affect my community? This other person, what are they talking about? What was their platform when they started? What were they doing before they did this? All those things that goes into what makes an educated voter. If you're taking your cues off of cable news, you might as well have taken your cues from Facebook, because there isn't much difference at this point.
Yes, sir. And even a highlight on that, I would say specifically, I know a lot of people who are a part of our organization live in Georgia. And, one senator, which I'm an independent voter, period, up, down, in between. But I can't say at the Senate level, one person who I personally feel needs to be in office is Raphael Warnock. And I feel like the things that he's pushing for and the things that he's trying to get done are things that us within the minority community are actually geared towards getting done. So that's why I say, me either way, I'm not I'm a very neutral, independent thinker and voter. And when I do my research on different candidates and policies that they're running behind and the things that they are looking, to push, as far as Georgians, I feel like he would offer us, the opportunity to see the growth in the minority community in Georgia that we are looking for and the things of that nature. And the funding come towards these minority communities that we are needing to redo our buildings, redo our infrastructure, redo our own inner community economies and things of that nature.
Right. Yeah, like I said, in this voting cycle, based on the research that I did, I ended up voting a lot on the Democratic side, just based on the people that are currently in office, the people who, the platforms of the people who were running and some of the things going on. 4 years ago, I lived in Houston, and my vote was a lot more mixed in that regard, just based, again, on what I was hearing, what I saw, voting records, things like that. So again, this is your life. This is your livelihood. This is your community. These are your people. This is what's going on. This isn't a gang. Okay. So just voting one way or another based on, what someone says, that's disingenuous and is voting against your own best interest. in a lot of cases, because if you're not educated on the situation, if you're not educated on the person, you're just listening to the indoctrination and training of being pro this party, anti this party, based on some specifics and some over the top rhetoric that gets 90% of the headlines. That's doing yourself a disservice. And, we are learning the hard way um, how over the top, this can get, and how much it can affect your community, on a very visceral level, depending on, who's there, who's making the policy, who's not making the policy, who's signing off on this, who's not signing off on that, where someone decides for voter prudence, they'll go in one direction or another, and it has, terrible effects on whether or not you're even employed, whether or not you're able to take care of things and feed your family, whether or not people are going to do what needs to be done during a situation like with COVID-19, when you have all these different things, you got people shutting down, you got people not knowing what to do, people not having access to the things they need to do to be able to keep a business going. And as for people in the minority community, especially when they're trying to get things done, you're trying to work a job, you're trying to take care of your family, you're trying to start a business, you're trying to do all these different things. All of these things are on the line. And, so it's not, again, I keep going back to this. We don't live in a world anymore where it's okay to be uneducated about your voting practices and about the people that we're going to try to put our support behind. We're just not in that world anymore.
Now, the topic that I did want to talk to you about, I believe you said you took a look at the video and a couple things that he said about it, but the Ice Cube situation and just his wanting him saying he was willing to work with, whoever's in office, whoever's in power to get the job done. And I felt like, personally, he experienced a lot of backlash from a couple people in different communities for saying that he was willing to work with Trump. But, personally, I would say Trump, Biden, anybody who's in office, as he stated, because what happens if we do end up with Trump back in office? Do we all of a sudden then go, well, oh, I guess our movement is over, or I guess we can't get the things done that we want to get done? No, you have to be able to stand up and say, whatever it takes. I may not like you. It's a lot of people in business and things of that nature who don't necessarily like each other, but they make things work for the betterment of the business. And we have to start thinking more business minded within the minority community of we have to make things work for our community, up, down, there, in between, no matter who's in power, and not let my personal opinion, Senate, presidency, anybody take for granted our vote and say, basically, if I don't vote for you, I'm not black. Or like that statement has still not left, my mind of somebody saying, if you're not black, or you're not black if you don't vote for me. No, I mean, I can vote however I want to vote, dude. And I'm even going to go a little bit into the next thing. You can answer both of these for me. I even think with Biden, I still have yet for him. I want to hear him specifically take the time, whether it's an interview or whatever, and specifically address the minority community if he wants our vote. That would make me feel more comfortable giving him my vote. Specifically address the things, break it down, all these other interviews you're willing to do and the time you're willing to spend, but you're not willing to spend the time to focus on the community that you're asking to get these votes from. So, that's something I would like to personally see from him personally. I mean, if it doesn't happen, hey, it doesn't, and we vote how we vote and we pray for the best. But for me, I want to hear someone back up the things that they talk and the things that they say. And even if we do elect him, I'm specifically, as I said, within the first few weeks, the first thing I'm expecting for him is to show gratitude towards the minority community by implementing a lot of these policies and start pushing a lot of things that have been sitting on the table for years that have not been passed.
Yeah, absolutely. So starting off the top, with the Ice Cube interview, I do want to, state for the record, I don't disagree with where he's coming from on that. Where I think an issue comes from with this is, number one, there, just because of the way these things are done, and again the gang mentality cycle of, well, this is the party of this and this is the party of that. That there would, I don't know, and based on the anger that I heard, I'm not sure if he was entirely prepared for the amount of co-opting and backlash that would come from from that. Because should you be opening to listening to all sides? Yeah, you should, absolutely. You're a fool if you don't, because when you're looking at a pro-black situation, when you're trying to really get some substantive change going, if you sit around waiting for one party or another to give it to you, you're insane. That's never coming. These issues have to be forced. These issues have to be, kind of, grabbed and gotten however it is that they're gotten. But the problem with that whole situation is that no matter what was going to happen there, that message is going to get co-opted. There were people who go, okay, well, fine, you're black. Why would you be, why would you even be talking to the Trump administration when they've done this, and this? Granted, not wrong. At the same time, you flip on the other side of the coin, and I looked at it from purely conservative and right-wing leaning media. Since that meeting happened, since those interviews happened, and they co-opted them. They co-opted it in a different way of saying that, oh, hey, he's helping the White House on the plantation plan, which is funny because in the first 5 seconds of his interview on CNN, he made it very clear that he was not helping them on that platinum plan. So both sides actually played games with and co-opted his message on that, which again goes back to our earlier conversation. One of the things that I look at again is the who, what, when, where, the why, and the how. When he had that meeting with Katrina Pearson. Katrina Pearson is a talking head advisor who goes on shows. She doesn't do policy. She can't do policy. She has never taken a policy in the history of this administration, taken a policy to the administration and that become an actual thing. There is no history there at all. So I get being hopeful when it comes to that, but it's, it's basically asking, it's basically walking into an establishment and the person at the reception desk, you talking about them about substantive policy change for the company. It's great. That person does represent the company, but it's very unlikely to go anywhere. Another problem that I have with this is that, again, because of that and because the concentration and all the media attention went on, oh my God, he's black, why would you, do that? And the co-opting on that side, miss all the, all the dumb things that are being said by co-opting it the other way. By them attaching, his name and his message for what he's trying to do, because he was trying to do, the contract with Black Americans. He's trying to do the CWBA. He's not trying to do the Platinum Plan. And one of the major parts of the Platinum Plan is making sure that you put the KKK and Antifa on the same plane. That is as important to anything going on in the Platinum Plan as anything that would happen for Black Americans. Most of the rest of that stuff is all white noise. We want to create 3 million jobs in the Black community. That's awesome. How? Where? In what field? There's nothing behind that. It's all white noise. It's just like one of those executive orders where they promise to look at something. Making, they'll throw out things. Well, we'll make Juneteenth a federal holiday. That's awesome, great. That's late, but there are other things that are in there that just have no substance behind them. So, he was asking for either party to sign on to the, contract of Black Americans. And again, it's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, asking people to sign on to that is the same as asking politicians, it's the same as when they asked Joe Biden to sign on to the Green New Deal. It's the same as when progressive candidates are asked to sign that progressive pledge. I don't know if you've ever seen the progressive pledge and all the things that are in there. There are things that go up against the biggest monster in the room, the biggest elephant in the room, which is the money and the politics. And that the voting and where things are going on the larger levels, and the reason why they never help, common people, common worker, common labor unions, uh, minority communities as a whole. The reason these things never work out is because of the money that is going into here. The monster in the room is never addressed. What kind of got everybody into this partisan mess in the first place? That part is not being addressed at all. So, one of the problems that's going on with that is that there needs to be like a legitimate plan as far as being able to get in on the ground floor of what real change looks like. If you're trying to actually help Black Americans, and don't get me wrong, the Contract of Black Americans does do that. But if you're trying to actually get people on board with this for a major party, it's not going to be just like, hey, I wrote this policy, sign on to this. It's not going to be just, okay, well, I was able to speak with this party now, and this other one said, well, we can talk after the election or whatever the case may be. We have to be able to we know we're in a situation where we're dealing with two parties and neither one of them have our total interests at heart. So when you're looking at the bullet points and you're looking at the pieces, one of the pieces that I was able to peel from part of Barack Obama's speech today was about not waiting around to find out who has everything on your checklist, because you're not getting that. But when you're going through that checklist and you're looking at, minority community and what is going to work for us and what are some of the things that we're looking for, well, we need to have a legitimate conversation on what that is, and then see if we're going if either one of those parties are asking for that, if either one of those parties are going to get that, and then we can hold them accountable to what we're doing. One of the things that I was looking at, and I've seen a few people do this before, but I honestly think this is something that everybody should do. Hell, I think it's something this organization should do, where we begin to actually rate, people who are running for things. The NRA does this, where they will actually rate someone based on how they are with the Second Amendment. And you'll see, oh, well, this politician has a D rating from the NRA, something like that. You can actually have something like that for the minority community, where where we're looking at what you guys are doing, what the policies that are being done, the results of these policies. Did you drop what you were going to say, what you said as soon as the election was over, things like that, and being able to have something to help inform voting public in that community of, this is the guy who's running for this office. He's been in office for 4 years. He has an F rating with us, and this is why. And again, it goes to furthering that education. So where, the only place where I feel like Ice Cube missed the boat is that, plan was sound, but I think understanding that both sides are going to co-opt this, especially at this time of the of the electoral cycle, with the election being this close, that his thing was going to get co-opted in either way he said anything. If he sat down with any of them, reaching out with them, any of those different things, that it was going to be co-opted in both ways, and that, what people were going to do with that. That there is going to be people who are just going to say that stuff no matter what. And, so I get where he's coming from on that. I get the anger, but at the same time, there was pandering on that second side, where you were talking to somebody who's not even a policymaker, who was not going to be able to offer you anything, who was not going to be able to commit to anything. It was literally, not necessarily a photo op, but it was literally just a thing we can say, hey, look at, hey, we talked to Cube. See, that means we're trying, right? And they're able to co-opt it that way. So that didn't help either. You kind of see what I'm saying with that?
I get where you're coming from, and I mean, I think even bigger than that. I mean, earlier when we first started, I said, you know, the unaccounted for people who are voting, who I feel like are important to this election, who have been neglected in this election and not even really talked about. I can say I know one side hasn't really even took the time to even speak to their things that community is wanting to get done. And I feel like this will be the swing states, the swing group is the actual Hispanics who are registered to vote. If you think about it, in every swing state, there's a pretty high group of Hispanics in that state, in most of them, in most of the states that are labeled swing states this year. And that's purposely because of that factor. And I think that is the one thing Trump actually has going for him, believe it or not. I believe that, yes, a lot of illegal immigrants who don't have the right to vote probably support Joe Biden, but that doesn't help Joe Biden because they don't have the right to vote. But when you look at the growth amongst the Hispanic community over the Trump presidency, it has been a lot better than people have been paying attention to. Now, you'll have the younger Hispanic group, of course, who are more progressive and have grown up in America and things of that nature, who will
Mm-hmm.
vote blue specifically off of the way they're raised and things of that nature. But I feel like a group that is overlooked right now is the Hispanic group. And I mean, they're also a part of the minority community. And we have been focusing, yes, and that is our main focus right now on certain things within the uh, Black community and the African American community and things of that nature. But um, I feel like we're gonna possibly lose an election due to our counterparts who are not even being recognized uh, by this campaign. I have not yet seen Biden take the time to, throughout his whole campaign, not pay attention to everything. Besides AOC, uh, I think she's the only, well, I'm not going to say she's the only Hispanic in government that has supported him, but I would say the biggest one uh, as
Mm-hmm.
far as who has a voice within the Hispanic community. Further than that, you've seen a lot of Republican Hispanics, believe it or not, Marco Rubio. Uh, I forget the other fellow's name, but it's a ton of Hispanic Republicans who are pushing for that vote. And if you remember, the Republican convention took time to actually speak towards the Hispanic voters, whereas the Democratic convention didn't. And I mean, I feel like that's the biggest thing going on right now as far as your swing voters. So I think
Mm-hmm.
Biden really coming tomorrow. I think maybe one of his last big opportunities to speak to the minority community as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and speak more so what he's planning to do for the minority community as a whole. Um, and at the same token, I don't know if you've ever seen his remarks on, Trayvon Martin and things of that nature. But I need for Biden to clarify where he stands as far as the whole defunding the police and where does he stand on uh, the law enforcement side of things because him and both Kamala Harris have a law background.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't really they say, oh yeah, we're gonna reform the judicial system. How? As you always say, how? I have yet to
Yeah.
see how. Now I like it, I like what I'm hearing, but how? And now at the same time, last thing, and then I'm gonna let, I think that you know they say they're gonna reform the judicial system. At the same time, I've seen judicial reform and it's been happening over the past 4 years. And that's sad to say, but that's the truth. It didn't happen before 2016. It wasn't happening at the rate that it is now before 2016. Not to say it didn't happen. It wasn't happening at the same rate. So I need for them to clarify on a lot of things, you know, as a minority voter for me, the things that
Okay.
are important to me, uh, how they're planning on fixing those issues.
Okay. Yeah. Now, as you know, what I would say, all of that, again, I did not disagree at all. I would say that it would probably be a good idea if they do nothing else to speak out loud stuff they've put in print. They put a lot of the policy agenda and things like that. I believe this was also a mistake that Hillary Clinton made in 16 of putting a lot of your policy stuff on your websites and on your posts and things like that without, with fail, but and also failing to speak them out loud. Because there was some, there was some details of plans of how you would reallocate funds, and to the training and psychological evaluation, the body cams, doing trying to outwardly challenge qualified immunity, and adding more money for things like mental health and social workers, so that police aren't the primary people or the only people dealing with mental health things like that. So there were some actual, policy plans. And again, all those things are good. Say them. If you put them out, if you're putting them out there, if it's on your website, you should be saying that. So, I agree. I hope that they take the opportunity, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm better than Trump, than to actually give out some of those policy things that I think are actually good things. I think one of the 400 plus plans that the Democrats put out since January of 2019, that haven't even gone up for Senate vote yet, that have been literally locked up and not allowed to be voted on by the Senate. I think more conversation needs to be spoken of about those things about being able to some of the stuff they're talking about doing with student loan debt, some of the stuff they're talking about doing with money in politics and predatory lenders and predatory student loans, and all these other different things that they have going on. Stop fighting the I'm not him fight, and actually speak on those things, and you actually have a better chance of actually hearing and getting the support of some of these people. Granted, and again, I will also agree that more conversation needs to be held with minorities, as opposed to just simply Black, when it comes to violence and police brutality, and when it comes to LGBTQ, on very specific subject matter in that regard as well. There needs to be a broader spectrum outreach on what it is that you want to do. Now, again, I've said this many times, presidencies are not about their candidates, they're about their cabinets. Famously, George W. Bush probably wasn't even really president. Dick Cheney actually was, when it comes to like how policies were actually implemented and the things that were actually done. So when we're looking at some of these people and some of the statements that they make and some of the things that they've done, again, the people that are surrounding him are going to be just as important. I spoke on this before as well, where when you look at the voting records of people, the advantage, that's going to be advantage Trump all day long, because he has only got 5 years worth of rhetoric, and some of that rhetoric's been horrible, but at the same time, small amount. And when it comes to someone, Harris hasn't been in as long, but we got Joe Biden, who's got nearly half a century in the game. Anybody that's been in politics longer than 15, 20 years, they got some ugly votes on their record. Ugly. They got some stuff that when time comes for them to try and run for a serious office like president, they have some uncomfortable questions that are going to be out there about them. That's just how it's going to be, and that's legitimate. Now, again, I won't dismiss those things, but I will say what's going on now needs to carry a little more weight than what was going on in 1978. I will say that, because there was a whole different political climate overall, not just with that particular person, with all of them. So that part is legit and real. Another thing that I will say is that, we need to be careful on sacrificing what we're not hearing for what we are seeing. And what we are seeing, and some of the policies that we are seeing, and some of the things that are going on, are actively harmful, if not absolutely outright destructive to us even having a legitimate future in any kind of long-term sense, as opposed to any one thing that we are hearing or not hearing now. Substance, again, matters. There's been a couple of things about criminal justice reform, but again, the substance, there have been a few people who've been let out, but the bottom line is this: I'm standing here, and there's another person standing here, exact same criminal history, exact same criminal record. That person happens to be Caucasian. I happen to be Black. We go in front of the same judge today. I'm going to jail for longer. That's not conjecture. That's not hyperbole. That is not my opinion. That is what would happen based on all that we have seen. And that is including today with the criminal justice reform that this administration keeps claiming that they've been doing. So all of that stuff is legit, and it all needs to be on the line. It needs to be substantive law. And there hasn't been law passed on any of these things. There hasn't been actual, there's been some policy put out there. There's been a couple of executive orders. We need movement, which is why I say presidency means something, cabinet means more, and the Congress means the most, because you're going to need all three to put any real laws on the books, which is another thing we haven't been doing in years. We're not making law anymore. We're making rhetoric-based policy that comes in the form of executive orders and is battled out in the media. That needs to stop. So that's another thing that I'm looking forward to, to see if we do get a new administration. That's what I want to see happen. Regardless of if it's Trump with a Democratic Congress, or whether it's Democrat across the board, or whether it's split Congress with Democratic president, whichever way it shakes out, we need substantive law that's going to be able to tell us where we are, where we stand, in the direction that we're going, so that we actually can be able to take care of business and actually can see where we're going and actually can have some sort of direction. Because right now, everybody's just kind of floating that out there and just putting out whatever they want to put out. And they're pandering to the most common denominator that'll get them the most votes based off of whatever data research they've paid for today. The entire reason why you're not hearing any of these people talk to the Hispanic community, quite frankly, is because there's been some research on this, that, and the other. The Trump team does research on how you can hit specific counties and specific things, targeted things, to be able to get yourself electoral votes, where the Democrats have been doing their targeted research on broadening the overall electorate and seeing if you can just overwhelm with the popular vote. Both of them are potential winning strategies, and both of them are seriously flawed. So, it's an ugly situation all the way around. But again, like I said, just for me personally, I'm more concerned with, I give a little bit more weight to what I see going on right now and what I hear going on right now versus what I, am kind of hoping I will get in the future. I just know we're in a bad situation now. And if we want to get a foothold on this so that we can actually get something, that we're not going to get it in this way, and we're not getting it in the direction that we're going. And the direction that we've been going in for a little while now hasn't seen us emerge, and it hasn't seen us even get the beginnings of an emergence. So I would like to see that, if nothing else. So if that means change, great. But if it doesn't, and we're able to get something out of it too, I'll be just as happy. But I just want to make sure that, we put it out there for people, anybody that may be watching this, anybody that may be listening. Hey, if you don't like what you've seen, vote that way. If you don't mind what you've seen, or you think that there's more to it than that, vote that way. But A, make sure you vote. B, please be educated. Do not just allow, people who have a vested narrative to tell you what you should be doing, and pay attention, because everything's on the line here. We're not hearing everything we need to hear from either side. So what are you hearing, and how much of that matters to you? That is what is important to us. And I think as we move on to our final comments here, obviously you can go first. I think that's the most important thing that we need to look at, both from this debate coming up tomorrow, and for anybody that hasn't voted yet. What is it that you actually do want? If you're undecided at this point, what is it that you're looking for? Because it's time to put it on the table.
Yes, sir. And leaving this week, I just again, as we do every week, I wanted to make sure, especially within the minority community and people who do listen to things that we say, watch our posts on the organization's page. COVID safety is number one. It's getting colder. The potential numbers is looking like heading into a flu mixed season is going to be catastrophic. So make sure you, by all means, take safety precautions in every area of that aspect. Also, if you people could find the time to look at the situation going on in Nigeria and how that's affecting them, and also allow our counterparts in Nigeria to let them know that us as a minority community in America also support their fight and their cause and the things that they're trying to change in their country and get done. Um, uh, Again,
Yeah.
I think.
Oh no, go ahead, finish, please.
Yes, sir. Again, as I said, and a huge question as a minority voter, the biggest thing I'll be asking myself uh, heading to a ballot box right now is, you know, really with my vote, I can't just give it to anybody for nothing. And on top of that, uh, a big question that came across my mind this week: how stuck on Joe Biden as a minority community would we be if he wouldn't have not chose Kamala Harris as his running mate? And that's it is what it is. He did, and we're moving forward in that aspect. But that question means a lot in a deeper sense. Uh, you know, does a person for me, I continue to see a group that, and the Democrats have to stop doing this. They continue to play on people's fear of COVID. They continue to play on people's fear of things that are going on in the economy. They play on the fear card, and they've got to get on the offense and stop playing on the fear card and play on the actual policy, play on the actual things that they're planning on getting done, and give American people, uh, verbatim of what the things that they're trying to get past and things that they're trying to accomplish, and why we as a minority community deserve to give our hard earned for vote to them.
Absolutely. To piggyback off of that, you know, put out what you're gonna do. Put out your policy. Put out what you have to say. I mean, I've actually taken a look and done some research, and I've seen some good things. I've seen some good policy. Just speak on that. Believe it or not, the entire electorate is not just literally sitting around looking for the sensational moment of the day. We the media has concentrated so hard on a locked in 30% of the voting electorate, one way or the other. The hard right and the hard left, they've concentrated on that. They sensationalize that. They put that out there, and they think that that's what moves the needle. The bottom line is, you take both of those, you add them together as 60%. There's another 40% of the voting electorate out there that can really swing this vote one way or the other. It can swing things, either towards progress or towards stagnation. And we have an opportunity to really, move that needle as long as people are educated. A lot of people have already voted. I've already voted. A lot of people are going to be voting over the next few days in any places that have early voting and leading on up until election day. We absolutely have to take our future into our own hands. And it's not just about what people say and what people do. I mean, obviously, we're in a situation where we have to protect ourselves from COVID-19. When you're going out there to vote, make sure you're doing it. You're giving yourself time. The lines are long. Make sure you've given yourself, a chance to stay healthy out there, that you're wearing a mask, you're wearing gloves, that you know where to go, that you know what you need if you're going to vote. If you have to have a specific ID, if you have to have a voter's registration card, whatever it is you need, take those few extra minutes to make sure that your voice is heard and that your vote is counted. Bring a backpack, bring some water with you, bring some stuff that you can, make sure your battery's charged on your phone because you may be there a while. Take care of those things to make sure that your voice is going to be heard. And, the last thing I would say is, we got less than 2 weeks to go with this, and then the real work begins. Because once someone is voted on and once someone is elected, that's the beginning of this train. We have some very ugly trends that need to stop, and we got some momentous things that have come out of that we want to keep going, and we have to keep pushing. This is not the time to slow down. The election is not going to be the great we did it moment. It's the now the work begins moment. So, I would encourage all members to stay involved. If you get a chance to participate in these calls, please do so. If you don't, and you just get a chance to listen or watch on YouTube, please do that as well. If you are, looking to do something financially and you want to try and figure things out and maybe one day get a leg up, check out those Minority Mondays, like, share, subscribe to these videos, make sure that you're getting a chance to get involved and, help us out and also help yourselves out and bring your opinions to these things. We can't do this without you. We all do this together. That is, how we're going to build a better tomorrow here. So my last word on that is make sure you stay involved, stay safe, take care of each other out there, and make sure that you guys vote and be a part of this process. So thank you all, and you guys have a great week.
Yes, sir.